My name's Amelia, and I've got a story to tell you. I grew up in what you'd call an ordinary family: mom, dad, and a little sister named Lily. Sounds nice, right? Well, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows. Lily was difficult, to put it mildly. She was the kind of kid who'd scream bloody murder if she didn't get her way. And boy, did she know how to work our parents. They'd bend over backwards just to keep her from throwing one of her famous tantrums. "Amelia, honey," my mom would say, her voice strained, "could you please let Lily have the last cookie? You know how she gets." And I'd nod, because what else could I do? I was the good girl, the one who didn't make waves. I learned early on that it was easier to fade into the background than to compete with Hurricane Lily. As we grew older, the pattern stayed the same. Lily demanded, our parents caved, and I just tried to stay out of the way. I buried myself in books and schoolwork, dreaming of the day I could leave it all behind. That day finally came when I got accepted to college on a full-ride scholarship. As I packed my bags, I felt a mix of excitement and guilt. Excitement for the new life waiting for me, and guilt for leaving my parents to deal with Lily alone. But I pushed that guilt down deep. It was time for me to live my own life. The next morning, as I loaded my beat-up old car with everything I owned, my mom hugged me tight. "We're so proud of you, Amelia," she whispered. "You're going to do great things." Dad clapped me on the shoulder, his eyes suspiciously bright. "Remember, you can always come home if you need to." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. Lily watched from the porch, arms crossed, not saying a word. College was like a breath of fresh air. For the first time in my life, I didn't have to tiptoe around anyone's feelings or give up what I wanted. I threw myself into my studies, determined to make the most of this opportunity. Meanwhile, life back home continued as usual. Lily, predictably, didn't move out. Instead, she married her high school sweetheart, Tom, right after graduation. And where did they decide to live? With our parents, of course. I'd get calls from Mom every now and then, her voice tired but trying to sound upbeat. "Lily and Tom are still settling in," she'd say. "It's nice having the grandkids around." But I could read between the lines. Lily was using our parents as free childcare and housekeeping. She'd pop out 2 kids in quick succession, all while never holding down a job. Tom worked, sure, but from what I gathered, he wasn't exactly bringing home the big bucks. One day, during a rare visit home, I overheard Lily talking to Mom in the kitchen. "Mom, can you watch the kids tonight? Tom and I want to go out." "Lily, honey, your father and I had plans." "Oh, come on. It's not like you have anything important to do. We never get a night off." I peeked around the corner to see Mom's shoulders slump in defeat. "All right, dear. We'll watch them." It made my blood boil, but what could I say? I was the one who'd left, after all. So I bit my tongue and focused on my own life. After graduation, I landed a job at an international company as a manager. It wasn't easy. I worked long hours, took on extra projects, did whatever it took to get ahead. But it paid off. Within a few years, I was head of my department. While Lily was demanding our parents buy her groceries, I was saving every penny I could. It wasn't glamorous, no fancy clothes or wild nights out for me. But slowly, surely, I built up my savings. First came the apartment. Nothing fancy, just a small 1-bedroom, but it was mine. I remember the day I got the keys, standing in the empty living room, hardly able to believe it was real. Then the car. Again, nothing flashy, but reliable and paid for in full. All the while, I kept my head down and worked hard. I didn't have much of a social life, but that was okay. I was building something for myself, something no one could take away. Dating? It wasn't really on my radar. I went out occasionally, but nothing serious. That is, until I met Jake. Jake was different from the start. He didn't try to impress me with fancy restaurants or smooth talk. Instead, he challenged me, made me laugh, and most importantly, he respected my drive. "You're something else, Amelia," he said on our third date, shaking his head in admiration. "Most people would be burned out, working as hard as you do. But you're thriving." I shrugged, a little uncomfortable with the praise. "I just know what I want, that's all." He reached across the table and took my hand. "Well, I know what I want too. And it's you, Amelia." For the first time in years, I felt my carefully constructed walls start to crumble. Maybe, just maybe, there was room in my life for more than just work and saving money. Jake and I dated for a few years before he finally popped the question. I'll be honest, I was hesitant at first. Marriage wasn't something I'd given much thought to, always focused on my career and financial stability. But Jake, he had a way of making me see beyond my self-imposed limitations. The day of the wedding arrived, and despite my reservations, I was excited. This was my day, after all. I was marrying the man I loved. Then Lily showed up. My sister waltzed into the bridal suite wearing a white dress that looked suspiciously bridal. "Oh, Amelia," she exclaimed, twirling around. "Don't you love my dress? I wanted to look my best for your big day." I stared at her, speechless. Was she seriously trying to upstage me at my own wedding? "Lily," I finally managed, "don't you think that dress is a bit inappropriate for a bridesmaid?" She pouted, looking around at our cousins who were helping me get ready. "What do you mean? I think I look great." "Don't I look great, girls?" Our cousins, not wanting to cause a scene, mumbled awkward agreements. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that this was my day. I wasn't going to let Lily's antics ruin it. "It's fine," I said, turning back to the mirror. "Let's just get this show on the road." The ceremony itself was beautiful. Jake's eyes lit up when he saw me walking down the aisle, and in that moment, all the stress and family drama faded away. This was about us, about our love and our future together. But at the reception, things got interesting. More than once, I overheard guests asking Lily if she was the bride. She'd giggle and say, "Oh no, that's my sister. But doesn't this dress look amazing on me?" Jake, bless him, did his best to keep me calm. "Don't let it get to you," he whispered, squeezing my hand. "Everyone knows you're the star of this show." And he was right. Despite Lily's best efforts, the day was still ours. We danced, we laughed, we celebrated with our friends and family. And at the end of the night, as Jake and I drove off to start our honeymoon, I felt a sense of peace. After the wedding, Jake and I settled into a rhythm. We moved into his apartment, which was bigger and in a nicer area than mine. I decided to keep my old place and rent it out, just another investment for the future, I thought. I threw myself back into work with renewed energy. Jake was supportive, always there with a cup of coffee when I was burning the midnight oil or a shoulder to lean on when deals fell through. But it wasn't just about work anymore. I started looking into investments, particularly securities. It was a whole new world, full of risks and potential rewards. And payoff it did. 5 years flew by, and suddenly we found ourselves sitting on a decent nest egg. That's when I had an idea. "Let's buy a vacation home," I suggested to Jake one evening. "Somewhere my parents could use too, to get away from everything." Jake knew what I meant by everything. My sister, her husband, their 3 kids, it was a lot for my parents to handle. We found the perfect place, a beautiful villa on a lake, just outside the city. It had everything, a large barbecue area, a sprawling terrace, 3 bedrooms, and a view that took your breath away. The moment I saw it, I knew it was the one. The day we closed the deal, I called my parents. "Mom, Dad, I've got a surprise for you," I said, barely containing my excitement. When they arrived at the villa, my mom's eyes filled with tears. "Oh, Amelia," she whispered, looking around in awe. This is too much." Dad was speechless, running his hand along the smooth kitchen countertop like he couldn't believe it was real. "It's not too much," I insisted. "You deserve this. A place to relax, to get away from. From your sister, Dad finished, a hint of guilt in his voice. I nodded. But listen, there's one thing. Can we not tell Lily that I bought this? Can we say it's yours? That you bought it with your savings? Mom looked confused. But why? I sighed, thinking about the phone call I'd had with Lily just the day before. She'd asked to borrow money for a car, and I'd said no. I could only imagine how she'd react if she found out about this place. It's just easier this way, I said. Please? They agreed, albeit reluctantly. Little did I know the storm this white lie would stir up. A few days later, I got a call from Mom. She sounded exhausted. Lily found out about the villa, she said. She wants us to sell it. Says we should give her the money instead, so she can buy a sports car and travel the world. I could feel my blood pressure rising. And what did you say? We said no, of course. But Amelia, it was bad. She screamed, she cried. Said we loved you more, that we always favored you. I closed my eyes, feeling a familiar mixture of guilt and frustration. I'm so sorry, Mom. I never meant to cause trouble. It's not your fault, sweetie, Mom said, but I could hear the weariness in her voice. Your father and we've decided to move to the villa. Full-time. We can't do this anymore. As I hung up the phone, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. My parents were finally standing up for themselves, finally taking a step back from Lily's chaos. But at the same time, a sense of unease settled in my stomach. I knew this wasn't the end of it. Lily wouldn't let this go without a fight. It was a sunny Saturday when Jake and I decided to surprise my parents with a visit to the villa. But as we got closer, something felt off. The sound of loud music filled the air, and I could see cars parked haphazardly on the lawn. We pulled up to the villa, and the scene that greeted us was chaos. People were everywhere, drinking, laughing, kids running around screaming. And right in the middle of it all was Lily, holding court like she owned the place. When she saw us, her eyes narrowed. What are you doing here? I looked around, trying to spot my parents. Where's Mom and Dad? Lily waved her hand dismissively. Oh, Mom's out walking with the kids. Dad's gone to get more meat for the barbecue. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. You sent them out? While you're having a party? It's a celebration, Lily exclaimed. We're christening the new family vacation home. Not that you'd understand, Miss Workaholic. I felt my blood begin to boil. Lily, this isn't. She cut me off. Look, Amelia, why don't you and Jake just leave? Your sour face is going to ruin everyone's mood. I stood there, speechless. Jake put his hand on my arm. Come on, he said quietly. Let's go. As we drove away, I couldn't shake the image of Lily lording over my villa, the villa I'd bought for our parents. I can't believe her, I fumed. Using Mom and Dad like that, treating the place like it's hers. Jake sighed. Maybe it's just a one-time thing? But it wasn't. Over the next few weeks, I heard from Mom about the constant stream of parties and get-togethers Lily was hosting at the villa. And when she wasn't partying, she was dumping her kids on our parents. The kids are missing school, Mom confided in me during one of our calls. She sounded exhausted. Lily says it's not a big deal for Tommy, he's only 4. But Emily and Jack are falling behind. By the way, I forgot to mention that Lily gave birth to her 3rd child shortly after my wedding. I'd had enough. The next time I saw Lily, I confronted her. You need to stop taking advantage of Mom and Dad, I said. They're not your personal babysitters. And the kids need to be in school. Lily rolled her eyes. Don't be such a killjoy, Amelia. Mom and Dad love having the kids around. But I could see the toll it was taking on our parents. They looked tired, worn down. This wasn't the peaceful retirement I'd envisioned for them when I bought the villa. After several more failed attempts to reason with Lily, I made a difficult decision. I contacted Child Protective Services. The investigation was quick and discreet. Lily got a formal reprimand, and suddenly, the kids were back in school full-time. The endless parties at the villa stopped too. Mom called me a few days later. "Things have calmed down," she said, and I could hear the relief in her voice. "Your father and I are actually getting to enjoy the place now." I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. This was what I'd wanted all along, for my parents to have a peaceful place to retire. But my relief was short-lived. The next time I saw Lily, her eyes were full of venom. "I know what you did," she spat. "Calling CPS on your own sister. You're a traitor, Amelia. I'll never forgive you for this." A few months passed quickly. It was my mom's birthday, and Jake and I decided to surprise her with a weekend visit to the villa. We had visions of a quiet family celebration, maybe a nice dinner on the terrace overlooking the lake. But as we pulled up to the house, those dreams quickly evaporated. The place was in chaos. Music blared from speakers, people were everywhere, and kids were running wild across the lawn. It looked like Lily had invited half the town. We made our way inside, where I found Mom in the kitchen, looking exhausted and on the verge of tears. "Happy birthday, Mom," I said, giving her a hug. She clung to me a little too tightly. "Oh, Amelia," she whispered. "I just wanted a quiet day with family." "But Lily, she invited all these people. Your father and I have been running around all day, serving drinks, cooking food." I stepped out onto the lawn, searching for Lily in the crowd. When I spotted her, laughing with a group of friends, I marched over. "Lily, we need to talk," I said firmly. "This is Mom's birthday. She wanted a family day, not this." I gestured at the chaos around us. Lily laughed loudly. "Oh, lighten up. Mom loves having people over. Stop being such a buzzkill." Frustrated, I walked over to a group of guests near the speakers. "Excuse me," I said, raising my voice to be heard over the music. "Could you please turn this down? It's too loud." The guests, clearly drunk, just laughed and turned the volume up higher. As I stood there, trying to figure out what to do next, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. Lily was huddled with a group of kids, pointing in my direction and giggling. With horror, I realized she was handing them ice cream cones and encouraging them to throw them at me. Before I could react, the first scoop of ice cream flew past my head. I ducked, and it hit a woman behind me square in the face. Chaos erupted. More ice cream was flying, kids were screaming, and adults were yelling. Lily's voice rose above the commotion. "Look what you've done, Amelia. You're ruining everything, as usual." The crowd, fueled by alcohol and Lily's accusations, started to turn ugly. Men and women were shouting, moving towards Jake and me with clenched fists. I felt Jake's hand on my arm. "Amelia, we need to get out of here," he said urgently. But I'd had enough. This was my parents' home, the home I'd bought for them. This had to stop. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. "I'm calling the police," I announced loudly. The police arrived quickly, lights flashing. As it turned out, they'd already received noise complaints from the neighbors. "Who owns this property?" one of the officers asked. I stepped forward. "I do. I'm Amelia Johnson. My parents live here, but these people," I gestured to the crowd, "are here without my invitation." The officers nodded and quickly got to work, ushering the drunk guests off the property and warning them about the consequences of starting a fight. As the police cars drove away with the last of the uninvited guests, an eerie silence fell over the villa. The aftermath of the chaotic party was strewn all around, empty bottles, discarded plates, and the lingering tension in the air. Lily stood in the middle of the living room, her face a mix of shock and anger. "What do you mean, this is your house?" she demanded, her voice shrill. I took a deep breath. "I bought it. For Mom and Dad to retire in peace." "You?" Lily's eyes narrowed. Then, suddenly, her demeanor changed. A sly smile spread across her face. Well, Little Miss Perfect. always full of surprises. She sauntered over to me, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Listen, Amelia. Let's forget about this little misunderstanding. I've got a proposition for you. I raised an eyebrow, wary. What are you talking about? This property, Lily gestured around grandly. It's got potential. Why don't you sign it over to me? I could build a few more houses, rent them out. I've been looking for a passive income opportunity for ages. You've already got your fancy job. Why not help your sister out? Absolutely not, I said firmly. This house is for Mom and Dad. It's not for sale or development. Lily's face darkened. You'll regret this, Amelia. Mark my words. With that, she stormed out, her husband and kids trailing behind her. I turned to Mom, who looked shell-shocked. I'm so sorry, Mom. This isn't how your birthday was supposed to go. To my surprise, she pulled me into a hug. Oh, honey. Thank you for standing up for us. For everything. I spent the rest of the day helping Mom clean up the mess, but Lily's threat kept echoing in my mind. I knew my sister well enough to know she wouldn't let this go easily. Before Jake and I left, I made a decision. I hired a security company to install hidden cameras around the property and set up an alarm system that would alert my phone if anyone entered the grounds. 2 weeks later, my phone buzzed with an alert from the villa's security system. Someone had entered the property. Worried it might be a false alarm triggered by my parents, I called Mom. Mom, are you and Dad at the villa? There was a pause. No, honey. We're back at the old house. Lily, she insisted we come help with the kids. We'd been here for a week. My heart sank. I told Mom I'd call her back and immediately headed for the villa with Jake. The sight that greeted us was heartbreaking. The beautiful home I'd bought for my parents was in shambles. Furniture was overturned, things were strewn everywhere, and there was even some graffiti on the walls. Fury rose in me as I called the police. When they arrived, I showed them the security footage. There was no doubt, it was Lily and her husband, vandalizing the property in a drunken rage. A few days later, my phone rang. It was Lily. You need to drop the charges, she said without preamble. The police brought us in for questioning. They're talking about pressing charges for vandalism and trespassing. You have to make this go away, Amelia. I took a deep breath. No, Lily. I'm done cleaning up your messes. I'm done being the family peacekeeper at the expense of my own peace. From now on, you can talk to my lawyer. The weeks following the villa incident were a whirlwind of legal proceedings and family drama. I was determined to see this through, to finally put an end to Lily's destructive behavior. I had the villa professionally cleaned and repaired, carefully documenting every bit of damage. The bill came to just over $10,000. My lawyer advised me to sue for the full amount, and after some soul-searching, I agreed. The day of the court hearing arrived. I sat on one side of the courtroom, Lily and her husband on the other. She wouldn't even look at me. The judge listened to both sides, reviewed the evidence, including the security camera footage. In the end, his decision was clear. The court finds in favor of the plaintiff, he announced. The defendants are ordered to pay $10,000 in damages. But that wasn't all. Due to the nature of the crime and the clear evidence, the judge also handed down a suspended sentence for trespassing and property damage. The aftermath of the trial hit Lily and her family hard. Her husband, who'd always coasted by on charm and family connections, suddenly found himself struggling to find work. No one wanted to hire someone with a criminal record, even if it was suspended. Lily, who'd never worked a day in her life, was forced to find a job. I heard through the grapevine that she was waiting tables at a local diner, coming home exhausted every night. As for me, I made the difficult decision to cut ties completely. I issued a legal notice, barring Lily from the villa, and ceased all communication with her. It was painful, but necessary. Mom and Dad, finally free from Lily's constant demands, moved into the villa full-time. The change in them was remarkable. They looked years younger, more relaxed than I'd seen them in decades. "We should have done this years ago," Dad told me during one of my monthly visits. "We love having the grandkids over, but now it's on our terms. A few hours at a time and then back to our peaceful life." They'd left their old house to Lily, a final act of parental kindness, but made it clear that the financial support stopped there. It was time for Lily to stand on her own 2 feet. As for me, life was looking up. Work was going well, my relationship with Jake was stronger than ever, and then we got some unexpected news. "I'm pregnant," I told Jake one evening, my voice shaking with excitement and nervousness. His face lit up like a Christmas tree. He picked me up and spun me around, both of us laughing and crying at the same time. As I write this, I'm 6 months along. We're having a little girl. Jake and I are busy preparing the nursery, reading every parenting book we can get our hands on. I still think about Lily sometimes. Last I heard, she and her husband were fighting constantly, teetering on the edge of divorce. Part of me feels sad for her, for the mess she's made of her life. But a bigger part of me feels free. Free from the obligation to always fix her problems, to be the peacekeeper at the expense of my own happiness.